Hi everyone, I'm Nevo Hadas. Always gets pronounced Nevo or Nev, or it's perfectly okay, but it's fine. It's a hard name to pronounce. It was actually one of those things that kind of I think starts defining you as you move to an Anglo-Saxon country, and suddenly no one can pronounce your name anymore, which is so easy where you come from. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how it is. And I think actually that's probably why I got interested in a lot in anthropology and how cultures work and how people work, which is really critical for design thinking in a very kind of interesting way. So initially the way that this talk was sold to me was going to be an intimate little breakfast. You sit down and just chat to people. And then was yesterday evening, Bjorn told me, oh no, it's actually quite a lot larger than that. And then I thought, okay, well let me put together something for you guys from the materials we have. Initially it was called Why Everything Fails. Okay, but then I thought that could be negative and depressing, and it's not even 10 a.m. in the morning, so it became You're All Creative.
Much better.
Yeah, much better, much more uplifting and everything else. So a little bit about me. Long career, kind of started with the beginning of the digital wave in the late 90s, had one of the first design agencies, web design agencies in South Africa. Did the .com stint in San Francisco and lived there for a long time, so did all the VC capital, build a company, sell a company, came back to South Africa, ran the digital division of one of the big listed media companies, and then kind of retired in Cape Town, and then decided maybe I should actually do something again. And over the last 6 years, we've built up DYDX. And the focus of what we do is product and service design. So every day, all day, we kind of focus on how do we build products and services for customers. Most of the work is done internationally, but there's a growing amount of it here in South Africa, which is really exciting to see. So without boring you guys too much about this kind of stuff, we'll get started. The core of this is really that everybody is creative, and especially from a business perspective, I find this to be a critical component. There is this weird cartel or mafia of creativity, which is generally owned by people that can either write words or draw pictures, right? Who deem themselves to be the only ones that are creative, right? In my mind, that is craft, similar to pottery, maybe ironmongering, those kind of things. And creativity is actually something quite different. Creativity is the ability to connect different ideas and concepts together to come up with something new. And in that respect, I think everyone is creative. Ideally, your accountant should not be too creative, because that can land you lots of trouble, but everyone else, it's okay, they can be creative. Now, who knows who this person is? Joseph Campbell, right? 1, 2, not many? 2, okay, cool. A couple people know who Joseph Campbell is. Joseph Campbell is unbelievably influential in our society. We don't even know who he is. He's like one of those people behind the scenes. He is an anthropologist and psychologist who wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And that book basically focuses on the concept of a monomyth. And the monomyth is the idea that there is one primary story arc that we as human beings relate to, right? And is known as the hero's journey. Don't read about it too much, but basically what it says is Act 1, people come to the hero, tell him there's a quest, he has to do something, he has been chosen, he denies he doesn't want to do it, but does it anyway. Meets a mentor, goes through some trials, fails, right? Terribly sad, but then he tries again and wins, big party, kisses the girl, the whole story. Generally a guy, by the way. That's the one kind of weird thing about the hero's journey. We'll see the hero's journey in lots of scripts and movie ideas. Anyone recognize what this one is? Star Wars, yeah. Star Wars is literally built on the hero's journey. That is the primary story arc. Game of Thrones, hero's journey. All of these things that we kind of relate to, these big epic stories, all hero's journey. What has that got to do with anything, right? Well, basically our stories all focused on triumphs, and this is bad. And why is this bad? Because that overnight success arc story that we all see coming out of Silicon Valley, this belief that somebody comes in, he has an idea, the idea works, it takes off, he becomes a fantastic multi-squabillionaire overnight, and then he's hated by everyone. It's the arc that we all relate to the most. It's the arc that we tell most often, and it's not true. And what it does is it changes our perspective of how things should work, because we're focusing on these weird story arcs, right? Why everything fails. Well, most things, right? Actually, in truth, the book actually says that everything does fail. It's just a matter of time until things fail, right? Evolution, economics, you name it. Everything, given enough time, will fail. But there's a terrifying amount of reasons why things will fail, and that actually is the natural state of developing something that works. So the overnight success idea is an outlier. The success is the process of failures is the reality, right? The thing that even that realistically, even though it's a process of success, well, process of failure, get a success, very quickly go back to failure again, by the way. But that's too depressing. That's why we've made it all that you guys are all creative, and that's the best thing. So amazing enough, we're 9 slides in, and there's nothing about design thinking yet, right? Which is, I think, is a miracle. I was trying to go to like 20, but I couldn't kind of really make it happen. But really why is because design thinking is all about rapid learning. What we do with design thinking is we try to empathize, we try to build up our body of knowledge, get outside ourselves, and failure actually does equal learning. That is how we get the feedback to know that we should kind of try something different, right? So I'm going to pass kind of a couple of lessons. I think I've got 5 lessons here, which I think are important about design thinking. The first one is you probably aren't right. This is the most interesting thing I've ever learned about design thinking. Every time we've had an idea and gone into research, generally not right. And so I've given up on having ideas until after research now. Early days was all about, oh, wow, I've got this brilliant thing and we could do this and this and it's going to be amazing. And then you research it and you go, oh, no one wants this at all. I liked it, but no one else did. You probably aren't right. It's hard to swallow, it's unpleasant, but it's the best way to approach design thinking. I don't know what the answer is. Right? And that's why we have like sweet polar bears, because they're uplifting and they're nice and they're cute. And I don't know else to kind of get you guys back and feel excited. So I know it's sad, it's a low blow, but there you have it. So we're going to speak a little bit about unlearning, because that's a critical component, right? You've got to go into these processes and unlearn everything you think you know about it. Because at the end of the day, what we actually want to do is create processes of controlled failure. That's what design thinking is. It is a process of controlled failure or learning. Upside, downside. I'm very much a glass half empty kind of guy, or the glass is too big. And why do we want to do this, right? Why is it important to have this process? Because when you look at innovation and R&D cycles and all those kind of things, in the messy part, where we're trying to figure out what the hell the idea is or how it should work, as a business, you spend very little money effectively, right? Like comparatively to when you've actually launched the product and take it to market and train your support people, your operations people, put up stores, get support lines, you know, all that stuff. The amount of money that you've spent in the early phase to the later phase is tiny. So we want to learn and make mistakes while it's cheap. Because the more we can do this, it's actually de-risking. And that's what I always find interesting. When you speak to accountants and financial people about these projects, they're all like, oh, it's a lot of money. Yeah, but you're looking to spend $100 million. Like, it's actually okay to spend this money up front, because otherwise you're just going to be burning like a lot more money later on. And that kind of gets their heads around it at some point. So yeah, so as you go through this mess, you'll find that once you've kind of stabilized and you have an idea that you think is working and you're getting the right kind of feedback, it's the right time to invest more and more into it. So, oh wow, it's video time. This is great. Cool. So this is going to be like, I'm going to show you guys basically kind of part of this process of how we do these things. And this is an example of a South African company called Smollen. I don't know if you guys know Smollen. They are a retail distribution company. They've got about 80,000 people globally, and they help brands market their products, both in formal and informal markets, from kind of shelf packing, all these kind of things. So very hands-on distribution kind of stuff. And the brief to us here was, how do you turn FMCG products into services in the lower income markets, between 5 to 15,000 Rand income markets? And this was the idea that kind of won at the end, but we had 3 or 4 other ideas that I'll tell you about later on. And this is the one that got selected, but you'll see how different everything was.
Retail is changing in a number of different ways. It's no longer the idea of brand to a store to a consumer. There are so many different ways that consumers access brands, and I think that as a business, our approach needs to be to understand how that's changing, where it is changing in different parts of the world, whether it's developing or developed parts of the world, and how best we can introduce our brands to those changes so they can continue to access the consumer the way the consumer wants to be understood. Informal trade is a beautiful part of the market. It's where there is still real trade, there's still real selling, there's real entrepreneurialism. And I think it is a really fast-paced changing market, and part of the market that no one does an exceptional job at from a brand perspective.
The South African informal retail market represents as much as 35% of total retail sales and is growing, but distribution is often complex, inconsistent, and opaque. The environmental impact of economic growth leads to increased consumption and higher levels of pollution. Over 300 million tons of plastic is produced globally each year, 50% of which is for single use. With the human-centered design approach, we did qualitative and iterative primary research into the informal market. We hosted a hackathon and ideation workshops. After testing and killing many ideas, one stood out as both viable and innovative. Gwalisa was created, meaning to fill up in Zulu. Gwalisa is an intelligent dispenser for spaza shops that does away with packaging. Customers bring their own containers from home and buy the amount they want as they need it.
The starting point was simply this idea of product as a service for social impact. And from there it went into a rigorous process of research, hackathon, back into further research, validation of ideas, testing of assumptions, and where we are today through that process is a working model that is operational in a township.
Refillable tamper-proof units dispense a wide range of everyday products using IoT devices to transmit customer buying behavior and stock levels. After developing and validating the idea, in phase 2, we designed, built and installed dispensers in spaza shops in Tembisa to test usability and customer response.
I think it's the best if you get a refill than to buy with the packet. Yeah. If you don't have enough money, you can buy a small 2 rand for a flour, 2 rand for the sugar, 2 rand for rice. Is going to be enough for maybe one person like me who's staying alone.
It is a good idea because like us, sometimes you broke, you can't afford the pack. So the Gwalisa one, you can just come with this cafeteria and everything is set. From 1 rand, come on, no one, everyone can afford that.
With the learnings from the first prototypes, we designed a second set of dispensers that were easier to operate, more robust, and included onboard batteries to operate during power outages. Alongside this, we completed a high-level service design of the business operations, building a live dashboard for consumer data, managing stock levels, ordering and distribution, and payments.
What we've created, I think, for brands is a direct opportunity to sell to this market in a very transparent way, to be able to get beautiful shelf presence, but also to be able to extract a large amount of consumer data, purchase data, and usage data, which makes it extremely attractive for them in this part of the market. As part of our social and environmental plan, we look to address 3 main areas: creating sustainable employment, using our services to benefit and uplift communities, and to have a less of an impact on our environment. So I think this really addresses all 3, which is an extremely proud thing for us.
So, interestingly enough, and this, by the way, the latest one that we're working on of the same concept, which is actually for stores like Nude Foods. I don't know if you know Nude Foods, right? Yeah, so the weighing stuff is really irritating. So basically now what you're going to do is just have the same sensors measure the amount you're dispensing versus that. There should be one, I think, there next week or the week after. It should be live, and we're kind of prototyping that and seeing why it will fail horribly. But the interesting thing about that project for me was this, is that we didn't know what we were going to do until about halfway through the project. We didn't even know what the problem was really. It was very broad. And that is the nature of a lot of these things. You want to spend time researching the problems so you have a better understanding of it before you come up with the ideas of what it could be. To give you an idea, by the time we got to the end of that first sprint, so like 12 weeks into it, we had 4 potential ideas, which that one kind of won. The first one was putting washing machines in creches and turning them into laundromats, right? Which sounds like a great idea. They have kids, people have lots of washing when they have kids. Let's put washing machines in those creches. Let people come do their washing. Omo washing powder isn't really kind of in that market. It's more hand washing stuff. Only to discover that even though everyone wanted it, so there was positivity from the parents and the creche owners thought it was great, the economics of it don't work. And at the end of it, when we actually told the creche owners, oh, the parents could come after, we kind of try to work out the business model, the creche owners are like, no, parents don't pay us anyway for school fees. They're not going to do this. Kill it. So that was kind of dead. Another one that came out that was actually quite interesting. So we did this hackathon that you saw there, not really because we think there's much value in a lot of hackathons, but because it's a great way to learn about the market and see how do they see the problem, how do they interpret the problem, how would they solve this, right, to kind of get insight. But one of the ideas that I had was really good, which was pay toilet. Right? So again, we were kind of thinking, I had some with Unilever and those brands, we thought, oh wow, we could do Harpic branded pay toilets. And when we validated that idea, it actually validated really well. Malls, a lot of people wanted these kind of services because funny enough, the cost to malls of running a bathroom isn't cleaning it, It's actually that people steal the sinks and the sanitary ware and everything. That's really the cost, and which we didn't know. But again, that got killed because Unilever didn't want to be associated with pay toilets. So it got sidetracked. And then that idea really came through. And when you look at the viability of a concept like that, and it's not really new. It's not like people have been selling stuff, buying bulk and selling smaller bits and pieces for like pretty much since people started buying and selling stuff, right? So it's not like this is a brand new idea that no one's ever like done before. It's just about how to use technology and other things to make this idea more effective in that market and have a far broader reach that we managed to do there. So that was interesting there, right? So a little bit of the design thinking stuff. Finally, we had a design thinking slide. Human-centered approach that integrates the needs of people, possibilities of tech, more than just tech. We just use tech here as that, and the requirements for business success. At the end of the day, if something isn't viable, if it's not going to work as a standalone business or be successful, it's not really a great idea, right? If you can't make it work, if you can't roll it out to the market, it's not really what I would call something that is a product or a service. I mean, it could be a great idea, I guess, as a concept, but it's not something that will really gain traction and be able to support itself in the market, right? And a large reason why we've seen design thinking take off in South Africa and in these markets is because there's a very rapid rate of change that we're seeing in society at the moment. And we get this issue now where 10 years ago, if somebody told you there'd be self-driving cars, they'd say this is impossible, right? It's not going to happen, like it's highly unlikely. Now if I say to you, guys, there's going to be self-driving cars, everyone's going to argue about when that's going to happen, right? Not if it's going to happen. And this kind of change is fundamental. Except if you're my dad. My dad will argue with you that it will never happen, by the way. That's the only person that will argue with that. Because if we think about it, in the 70s and 80s, when ATMs came out, most of you guys won't remember the 70s and 80s. You know, I remember the 70s and 80s when ATMs came out. And people were like, I'm never going to go get my money from a hole in the wall. That is insane, right? What if the machine counts the money wrong? What if it doesn't have enough money? Anything can go wrong. There's no way I'm going to do it, right? It was impossible. If you think about it today, everyone pretty much used to that as a concept that we do every day. We don't even think about it twice, right? This is the new concept that we're all freaking out about right now. Self-checkout. Everyone's like, there's no way I'm going to try and cheat the system. Everyone's going to steal from the stores. It's a massive freak out right now. In a few years' time, this will seem quite ordinary, right? And that's really where design thinking is key. It really helps businesses navigate this rapidly changing world that they're in and understand the context of where users are, where their customers are, and how they can move forward in that space. Right? So lesson 2, not evolving equals failure, because things always gravitate towards failure anyway. So if businesses aren't evolving, if you're not looking at how to change things, even if it's small changes, you're going to fail over time. It's inevitable. He's really quite an uplifting writer, though, by the way. It's quite a funny book, and it's actually quite good. But so let's talk a little bit about the design thinking process. And this is a slightly different twist on it, right? It's not going to be the usual, let's all have fun and kind of like it's, you know, this amazing thing of like an idea fest. It's not about that at all, right? Does anyone know what this is? It's a? Yeah, it's a, other than being a stock photo, okay, yes, it's a stock photo, correct. This is not design thinking, right? Having people sitting around, it may be, this looks very weird. It's like people sitting around a table and he's speaking. It looks like some kind of weird meeting. But generally, things with sticky notes do not make a design thinking, okay? Cokies and sticky notes are not like, I've got cokies and sticky notes and people are wearing sneakers, therefore it's design thinking. It's not how it works, right? This looks a lot more like design thinking, right? It actually looks, and I'll tell you why. Here's the key stuff, right? There's actually, like, it looks like somebody did some research, right? Somebody actually went out and spoke to users, developed some empathy. Okay, now maybe there's some design thinking involved. And also weird enough, no one's on their cell phones, which is kind of strange, but there's no laptops on the table. That's a good sign, right? And there's laptops on the table. It's probably not design thinking. I think she's peeling an orange, though. That's probably also good. That's like, exactly, energy app and it's healthy fruit, very good. Definitely design thinking, probably California, right? So the key thing we're really trying to do is to understand the problem more effectively. Why? Because if we understand the problem better, we'll have better answers. Like literally, it's a direct path. Better understanding of problem, better answer. No understanding of problem, same answer you've had anyway. Like don't waste your time in the process. So 2 things. One is reframing the problem, and the second one is defining the problem. They're two very different things, and I'll explain to you why, right? And I'll get there. Trust me, nothing ever goes quickly with these presentations. You kind of say it, kind of do stuff, everything else. So there's a whole joke about how many design thinkers does it take to screw in a light bulb. Anyone know? No? It depends, like, is a light bulb even the right solution? You know, what's the problem? You know, it could be anything, right? So, but I think it is an interesting concept, because that, for me, is the whole concept of reframing a problem. Is light bulb what we want to do, or is eliminating darkness what we want to do, right? What's also interesting is there's this great case study of the first people to do a manned flight. I think it was 30 minutes in the air by, like, personally manned. In other words, somebody is, like, using their personal body power. I don't know if it's pedal power or arm power, what the hell they did, to fly 30 minutes and to fly across the English Channel. It was a prize given. And the interesting thing was, the secret to winning the prize wasn't coming up with a better idea of how to fly a plane using your body's power. That wasn't what helped them win it, right? In fact, that was what led to failure of everyone that tried. The guy that won it, his key insight was, the most important thing was to be able to build a plane that I could rebuild quickly after it crashed. That was the key thing, because what happened with everyone else, they spent all their time coming up with this idea, building this amazing plane, you know, kind of spending months on it, doing this flight for maybe about 10 minutes, crashing, and then having to take another 6 or 7 months to try and rebuild it, right? Because it had crashed and they had to start again from scratch. What he did was built a system whereby he build a plane. Once it crashed, he could just rebuild it again in a couple of weeks and go again and again and again and again and again and again and again until finally he got it right. And that was a key component of understanding the problem in different contexts. The problem is not just manned flight. The problem is actually, oh wait, I need to be able to recover from failure as well as do the manned flight, and then I will win. So design thinking at the core is a methodology that leads to creative solutions, because it changes how you approach the problems, right? And that's a key thing that we have to understand. It's not about sitting in the room and kind of coming up with the ideas. It's the entire process to come up with the ideas and then roll them out and validate them. There we go, the double diamond. Everyone know this? Who here is actually familiar with design thinking at all as a kind of thing? 1, 2, 3. So a lot of people have never seen this before, right? So it's called the double diamond because 2 diamonds or squares on their side. Really what you're trying to do is explain the whole concept of diverge and converge. So when we first start a process, people will give us a broad problem. How do you turn products into services in low or middle income households? I don't know. I don't even know what the problem is, you know? So you spend the first time diverging and gathering as much information and data and research as you can, right? So you spend lots of time researching the context, what's going on, what's happening, all that kind of stuff. And then once you've got that data and the research, you start kind of converging towards an idea, which you kind of call a design brief, saying, we're going to solve this problem. We think to solve the bigger problem, you have to solve this smaller problem, right? But you can't start out with a smaller problem. You can't say, oh, just solve for X, which is what businesses love to do. They have to say, no, I know exactly. I know 100% what the problem is. Just do this. That's probably one of those things of why most things fail. You need to spend time with the problem, right? And actually, even though it looks like it's 50-50 here, I think it's more like 70-30. 70% of the time is with the problem. 30% of the time is with the solutions and the answers. Then from there, once you've got the design brief, you can start developing solutions. So again, you now analyze the specific problem you're focusing on, and then you converge again into some solutions that you can look at. At the end of the day, what you want to have is a number of solutions you're comparing, not just one, but that gives you an idea of what it is, and then you go through your trial and error and all the usual fun stuff that you would do. Make sense? Very high level? Cool. Right? And the other thing to remember, it's an iterative process. It's not like you go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. You always go backwards, because you always find out stuff that makes you have to go back and go, oh wait, I need to test that again. Or oh, this data means that my solution isn't right. Let me make changes and try it again. This whole thing of continuously being non-linear is critical to it being successful. So at the end of the day, what we've always seen is that research is the gateway to great ideas. If you want to have great ideas, invest the time and energy and effort in research. No one likes this. By the way, everyone loves the workshop-y stuff, right? Everyone wants to do the sticky note workshop, you know, high level kind of like, you know, healthy food. Everyone's in for that. Please go speak to 100 customers. No one likes that idea at all, right? No one's keen on that component. But yeah, so, and if you look at it from how it's broken down from a problem statement perspective, what you'll say is, that's my problem statement. These are the problems that actually make up that problem statement, the sub-problems effectively that are there. What are the insights I've gained from my research which feed into this problem that give me insight into how this problem actually shows up in the world or what makes up this problem? What are my hunches, right, about the problem or things, the areas I want to research or that I think are possibly solutions to it, right? And then how might we statements. So how might we fix this problem based on my insights and hunches and all those kind of things. Make sense? Cool. But the most important thing to realize, and this is again from a business perspective, is we always think that everyone wants to buy our product and we just have to find the right way for them to buy it. But there's a very big body of kind of research out there which is all about the concept of jobs to be done. And the jobs to be done concept actually says something different. It says a customer or client has got a problem that they're renting your solution to try and solve for themselves, right? They don't actually want your product. They don't care about your product. They care about solving their problems. And if you don't understand their problem really well in the context of the problem, you won't be able to solve it effectively. So jobs to be done really looks at it from a very high level. There's a main job to be done. Let's take an example of, I need a generator because Eskom is out again, right? The job to be done is, I need to go find a generator. You may have a generator, you may not. But that's really what I'm trying to do. That's the functional aspect. The emotional aspect is, I may be worried that the generator is using diesel and therefore polluting the atmosphere, right? And the personal dimension is, you know, I don't really want to pollute the atmosphere because I'm not happy about it, but I really want to watch Game of Thrones and Netflix, so I'm going to like do it anyway. The social dimension is I don't want people to know that I've got this diesel generator because it makes noise and I'm embarrassed about it, so I'm going to pretend that I'm not watching Game of Thrones, right? That I'm out. I'm going to take photos of my mountain bike and say I'm out riding or something like that, right? That's kind of the way it works. It's not just about solving the direct problem, it's about understanding the context of the problem and the other things that you need to solve for to make the problem really go away. So I must admit, when you do the corporate stuff and you go through the research plan, you see the eyes glaze over and the terror strike all the people that are attending them because they suddenly realize how much work that comes into it. But very quickly, if you're going to do research, you need a research plan, right? Again, not much sticky note and energy fruit here that's involved. It's about what methodologies are we going to use, how many people are we going to speak to, the fact that the research is iterative. We might not know what we need to know right now. So we might have to go back and do this research lots of times. We normally find we go back and we do research every single week during a design kind of process. Every week you find out new stuff that you have to validate and test and search. How are you going to do that? What methodologies would you use? How much is enough? At what point do you feel like you've got enough research that you've got something indicative versus needing something exhaustive? Like the interesting thing is, earlier on, you want quite a lot. In the process, you don't want too much. And towards the end, you want a lot. Because you want to, when you think you've got an idea, you really want to validate it very, very well. And most importantly, what assumptions are you making? I'm going to show you guys a project we did like just now in Côte d'Ivoire, which was a really interesting one for me about assumptions. Because we had a on-the-ground team. We had a team from Paris. We had our team from South Africa. And we went and did a lot of interviews. And it was a health service that we were kind of launching in Côte d'Ivoire. And one of the things we noticed in this health service was that people, it was for diabetic care. People don't like going to the doctor because they have to wait the whole day, right? And we thought, we'll just set up appointments, guys. Like we'll create, like in our concierge and our call center service, we'll set up the appointment for our customers so they can arrive there and they'll have an appointment ready and they can go straight to the doctor. I mean, this is going to be amazing, right? Just make it easier for them to set up an appointment, which we did. Only to find out in prototyping, they didn't make any difference at all. Because even though the hospital took appointments, they didn't keep appointments. Like, it didn't make a difference. Yeah, you want to be there at 10. Amazing, we'll see you at 10. Then you get there at 10 and like, just wait in queue because the guy got here at 9. So he's still waiting. You know, the people that got here at 9 and didn't have an appointment, it's first come, first serve. You can have an appointment, but that's an assumption that everyone made. Everyone made the assumption that if you've made an appointment, they'll keep the appointment, not realizing the local context with lots of research, right? The other thing that's really important is use multiple research methods. Don't just go out and say, I'm only going to do interviews, or I'm only going to do questionnaires, or I'm only going to kind of ask my neighbors, because, all my kind of kids and all that kind of stuff, right? Because multiple research methods build confidence. They give you a better idea that you've actually understood the issue. And most importantly, and the best thing is when you get conflicting research. And that happens a lot. Your interviews say one thing, your data says something else, right? And your desktop research says something completely different. And you go, okay, well, how do I deal with this thing now? What is it? Like, what does it actually mean? And that's really important, especially if you can start understanding why it's conflicting. At that point, it's gold. Most people kind of like try and hide it. It never comes up in the customer kind of feedback stuff. You say, oh, no, it's really good, right? And again, this is why everybody is creative. Because if you do this kind of work and you do the research and you understand the customer better and you spend time with the problem, it's much easier to have really amazing creative ideas. You've just spent more time with the problem, right? Lesson 3, using sticky notes doesn't make it design thinking, less theater, more research. That's a big reason why most things fail, is people say, right, we're going to do a design thinking workshop, guys, and everyone comes into the room, haven't done any research, but they have sticky notes and some exercises and healthy snacks. Like, it's just like, okay, great, amazing, well done. Sounds like a fun day out. So a little bit about ideation. All right, again, we know this double thinking thing. So ideation, by the way, comes in about here. This is where your workshop is with stickies, right? That's when you roughly get to it. You might do a small one there, just to kind of figure out what the problem is, but that doesn't need a big workshop normally. That's kind of over there, right? The key thing you want to do from ideation is actually generate multiple ideas. So this isn't about coming up with an idea. And that's an interesting concept. Often in businesses, when you have meetings, we judge it to be successful because we had an idea. We all agree this is the right idea. No. You don't want to agree this is the right idea because actually you have no authority. If you remember lesson 1, you probably aren't right. Don't have an idea. Have 2 or 3 ideas that you can research. Validate them, right? Build on those ideas, and then have a way to evaluate and compare those ideas. So normally what we will do is you'll actually have a table that says which of these ideas is right and most right for the problem we're trying to solve. Is it viable? Is it actually going to work? All these kind of things you want to ask in when you're comparing these ideas to really make sure you've chosen the right idea. My first boss was a guy called John Hunt. I don't know if anyone has heard of John Hunt. He's like Hall of Fame, advertising, absolute genius. The absolute genius was that he made you have 100 flippin' ideas before you even looked at what you did, right? When you have 100 ideas, it's easier to have a good idea, right? When you only have one idea, it's harder to have a good idea. Spend lots of time validating your ideas, because that's a critical component. So just because you had an idea and you like it, doesn't mean the market will like it and respond well, right? So, lesson 4, more ideas is better until less ideas is better. Okay, because very quickly what happens is you want to have more ideas to start with, but you want to have a process which very quickly lets you narrow them down into only 1 or 2 ideas. So if you remember the Smollen example, where we actually had 4 ideas, which were kind of great ideas, we managed to validate out within 3 weeks that those other 3 ideas would have issues and wouldn't work. So then we knew we could just focus on that one idea, and that was probably our best idea. And fundamentally, the last thing is prototyping your idea. In that Smollen example, for example, we had cameras in those spaza shops when we did the prototype, and you see how people use the machines, where their problems were, all that kind of stuff. Big thing we learned there was people would put in initially like 20 Rand of rice and never have a big enough container for it. And then like pull it, like don't know what to do. Like it was just like, okay, you learned lots of stuff. Okay, don't do that again, right? Change another machine. That's where we got to the fixed price. Initially we said, oh, let's let people do it by weight and by price and by this, and then just went, no, just do it by price. No one thinks by weight. I want 2 Rands worth of rice. That's how it works. But you learn that through prototyping, right? Most importantly, they loved my idea, but it still didn't work. That's often what we see. This was such a great idea, but it didn't work in market. What happened? Why didn't it go wrong? That's because you didn't prototype it and didn't look enough for reasons for failure. So, I'll show you guys another quick little video. Oh, okay, I'll have to do the manual thing. This is a company called Susu, based in France. It's an insurance service where basically what they realized was a diaspora. In other words, people from West Africa that moved to France wanted to look after their parents. Especially a lot of them were older and had chronic diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, those kind of things. but there was no structure for them to do that because there isn't very much kind of structured medical care in those countries, and there's no way, and before what was happening was just remittance. So they'd send money, it might not have gone through. And so this whole project came out about, it started out actually as looking at tontine. Tontine is the French version of a stokvel, or the West African version of a stokvel, of how can people manage their savings to allow for health. And it ended up actually being as an insurance service that got launched with Allianz as the backing insurance company.
Bola Bardet, founder and CEO of Susu Healthcare, approached DYDX with an idea.
I decided to start working on the problem to see how the people, all these people living abroad and sending a lot of money back home to support their family, could better help their family with, having access to better healthcare.
Our first question when kicking off a project like Susu is always, what are the best questions we can ask? Primary research in Benin, Ivory Coast and Paris uncovered a number of unserviced needs. Africa is faced with fraud, fake medicine, little education on medication, and poor access to quality medical care, especially in emergencies. We followed a customized service design process to co-create and validate innovative solutions to some of the most challenging issues. In 18 short months, we designed, built, and launched a full-service healthcare business supported by a digital platform, enabling diaspora in Europe to view and manage their families in Africa's healthcare. The less digital savvy beneficiaries can access the platform but have a medical concierge on call to help manage appointments, medicine delivery, and nurses' visits. We partnered with Susu to run MVP testing and then launch the service in Ivory Coast.
So at the Viviatech conference, we won the Sanofi challenge around diabetes management. So it was a great achievement for us. Yeah, I think it's just the beginning of the journey. We have great ambitions for Susu because we think that our model can scale anywhere in the world.
It was really interesting, the kind of takeout from that when we first started prototyping in market and the actual service, right? So this was a physical service in country. One of the things we did to make sure people got to hospital is we sent drivers to them because we just want to reduce the amount of complexity day one. You want less things to go wrong. So you say, right, we'll pick you up and take you to hospital for your checkups and everything else. And what we realized was the one person that we dealt with, the child, hadn't told their parents that they were going to come pick them up, right? So there was something wrong in that communication cycle with our first one. So this car arrives to pick up. The parent doesn't know who they are. She's very uncertain. She's not going to get in this car. She's not getting in the car no matter what you do. Like, you just can't get in the car. And you're like, okay, no one ever thought of this as a problem. How do we fix this one? So prototyping is really critical because you're going to pick up on-the-ground issues that you can then bring back into your product design and your service design to make sure that you go over it. Because the idea could be great, but how you execute that idea is really critical to make sure that the whole product fits together well. All right? So the questions I always love to ask, and we actually often end our brainstorming kind of ideation, workshop-y things with it, is why will this fail? Right? It's literally the most important question to ask because you start putting a list of reasons why this thing is going to completely mess up, right? And that actually lets you start to work on those and proactively try and solve those problems. The other one is, what is the customer losing? We always assume that our brilliant idea, the customer will love, but we never think of what is that we're taking away from the customer by solving this problem. So I'll give you an example. We did a lot of work with, I don't know if you know 22/7. And they were kind of looking at budgeting and people budgeting online and those kind of things. What was interesting for us was what the customer was losing was actually the flexibility of a pen and paper, right? Believe it or not, and some Excel. But most importantly, a lot of the people budgeting were losing the time they actually spent with their spouse talking about their finances. And that came out of their research. So you might not solve that problem. You might say, okay, cool, we accept that we can't fix this problem, but we understand that this is what people are losing when we give them this. People are also losing the ability to pretend they're financially okay, which is actually a big thing to lose. By the way, it's why ATMs won't show you their balance at the start of the transaction. They will never ever show you a balance when you start a transaction because they've seen that when they show you a balance at the start of the transaction, you're less likely to transact. Yeah, true story. I know this from having, we did a mobile wallet design many years ago, and we thought, oh, let's do this. This sounds like a great idea. Until you speak to people and they go like, no, this is a terrible idea. Don't do this. Okay. And then what is the behavior change required? Okay. It's one thing to have a great idea. What do I actually have to do to change people from what they're doing today to this new idea? How do I drive adoption? How do I make sure that it is easy enough for them to utilize this new behavior? And that, because that's a big thing. Behavior change is hard. It's really tricky to get right. Right? So lesson 5, test for failure, not for success. And puppies. Because puppies are nice, and we like puppies, and they cheer us up, and it's a nice kind of way to go from a very negative thought about how things will go wrong with your great ideas. So the most important thing to understand about design thinking, the reason it works is because it's a process and not a workshop. When we kind of just make it this meeting, it doesn't have the same impact. Right? And why is it a process? What are the fundamental things that make a process effective versus the workshop? And this is very much from a business point of view, but I guess it could work in an NGO or other things that have it. First one is less ego. The process allows you to not go into that room feeling like you have to have an answer, like you have to be the A student, like pick me, teacher, pick me, I know the answer. You don't have to have that. It's a process. It's okay, you can relax. Psychological safety occurs. I can take time to develop the answer. Right? It forces reframing. So I can't go in there blinkered and look at the problem the same way I look at every single other problem. So as an accountant or a financial person, I can't look at it from a financial point of view only. I suddenly see other information, and it forces me to look at it in a different way. Right? By the way, a creative person is just as bad as an accountant from a blinkered perspective. Right? You also look at it from your way, and then you have to kind of look at it other ways. It gives me time to understand the problem. It forces that kind of component to it. So it's not like, oh, I can just scan over that part and just gloss over it. Actually, there's time to spend it with the problem, right? It gives me the opportunity to test different possible solutions. You know, I can't just have one idea. I've got to have multiple ideas. There's a process. Let's just follow the process. And that automatically creates a better concept. Again, it takes that safety away. It's a weird thing that in corporates, we seem to really like the idea of we come to a meeting, we make a decision, we move on, we've come up with it, it's done. And we kind of celebrate that as really successful, effective meetings. So what the design thinking process allows you to do is step away from that mentality, put yourself in a different role. It gives us the ability to choose between the answer based on comparative data, not just gut feel. Often we call it hippo, the person with the highest salary normally gets to make the decision and decide that they're right. Or extroverts. Extroverts are great at this. If you're running a workshop really well, what will happen is the introverts start bringing in a lot more ideas, and the ideas become better and better and better. Because sadly enough, all the extroverts out there, like me, introverts are actually proven to just be smarter and more efficient over time. Literally science. It's very depressing, right? We'll be learning why it won't work, and it's okay to learn why it won't work, right? We've created a safe space where not working is a great outcome, because that's what's meant to happen. It's meant to not work. And finally, it actually reduces risk and improves ROI. So by testing things, testing them often at a low budget cost, by the time you're ready to go to market with your idea, you know that you know it's a safer bet. You don't have as many changes happening at the last minute, right? So kind of wrapping this thing up, if you're going to do these design thinking processes, what things you should start doing? Spending time understanding the nuance, not the symptom of the problem. So don't just say customers aren't spending enough, understand why customers aren't spending enough, right? Great example for me there was we did a project for Tsogo Sun. They had taken over the Formula One hotels, so it was Sun One brand. And their question was, why do we have bookings of 30% room nights in the morning, but 70% occupancy at night? Do 40% of people just miraculously walk through the door? Can't we just get them to book online and do something else? Maybe we need a loyalty program, right? When we did the research, though, what we discovered was the reason why people didn't book in advance is because their accounting policy said that if you hadn't paid for the booking by 5 p.m., they canceled the booking. Most of the people staying in those hotels were blue-collar workers. Therefore, they couldn't get there by 5 p.m. anyway, so they didn't get there 6 or 7, so there was no point in them booking. They'd call, say, do you have space? Great, I'll see you later, and that was it. So, always interesting to see what's happening. Symptom is people aren't booking. Actual nuance is they can't book because you made it impossible for them to book. All right? Change the way decisions are made. The format that you make the decision in can often change the decision itself. So if you're always using meetings to make decisions, change that format. Look at different ways of making decisions, and you'll actually change the nature of the decision. And practically unlocking the value of teams. So I know I didn't talk about it too much here, but one of the key things to look at is how do you build diversity into your team? And by diversity, I don't just mean gender and race and demographics, I actually mean thinking styles, skill bases. You know, let's go for like really diverse environments. And what you should stop doing is jumping to conclusions regarding the problem, making the same type of decisions because they're comfortable. So we always make decisions like this, we're going to make another one like that. You know, working in silos, not making the customer's problems the actual problems. Very often in businesses, we spend lots of time worrying about our own problem. We forget about the customer completely because we're just trying to solve the issue between accounts and the front desk. And that's the problem actually, not the fact that the customer wants X or Y or Z. That goes away. Exactly, and then searching for problems, for ways to sell your product versus ways to solve the problem. Very often, people do the process, and the process isn't, it's actually a marketing process they're doing. They're not really doing a design thinking process. They're trying to come up with new ways of building a better product and serving a need more effectively. They just want to have a different way of selling it, in which case it's advertising. It's a slightly different thing. All right? So summary of those lessons. Lesson 1, you probably aren't right. Lesson 2, things tend to failure over time, so you need to be continuously looking at things and changing them up. Lesson 3, using sticky notes doesn't make it design thinking, so spend less time in theater, more time in actual research. Lesson 4, more ideas is better until less ideas is better. Lesson 5, test for failure, not success. And that's why everybody is creative, because if you do this kind of stuff, your ideas will naturally be more creative, better ideas. Thanks, guys.
My name's Stephen Fine. I'm part of the Red and Yellow corporate training team. I'm part of the business development side of things. And just my takeaway really from that was the fundamental understanding that design thinking is all about problem solving. And I think listening to the talk, what I took away is that it doesn't matter what you do. You know, you speak about the customer, but it's actually understanding who your customer is. So if you're in HR and your aim is to increase retention, your customer is your employees. It's all about a process and a framework for solving problems that are actually it's relevant to your staff. And at Red and Yellow, our big thing is about creative problem solving. Our aim is to teach the great creators, inventors, leaders, and entrepreneurs of the 21st century. And we do that through our online courses. We do that through our corporate offering. And I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who was involved in organizing this event. I'm going to give another shout out to Bjorn at the back because he genuinely, there was a mass panic yesterday when we realized that there's going to be load shedding at this time. I want to thank all of you for coming out to this event. There's a team at the back to chat to about our online sales. If you're interested in doing any of our corporate training offerings or interested in discussing potentially us doing talks at your venue about design thinking, just to come in and inform your staff, we'd love to engage with you. Stick around for a bit, network. I was very keen to say head up to the rooftop bar and grab some coffee, but there's no power, so that's not really an option. But just wander around, enjoy our campus, take a look around, engage with the brand, and thank you so much all for coming.